The Acolyte is what you get when you hire people who majored in gender studies.
Leslie Headland somehow found a bigger way to shit on George Lucas's creation than ruin Johnson.
Imagine just for a moment being a Disney stockholder and coming to the realization that your $4 billion investment is being burned to the ground deliberately.
Not only did they ruin Anakin's redemption, but they also ruined his birth. He is no longer special because he wasn't the first to be conceived through the Force. Fuck Disney Star Wars for destroying my favorite character.
The Acolyte Episode 3 is the final nail in the coffin. The destruction of Star Wars is finally complete. The Force is female. Lesbian witches can create life using a thread long before Darth Plagueis. A lesbian immaculate conception. You can't make this shit up. Hashtag RIP Star Wars. Hey, people of the internet. Welcome back to another episode of Movies Good, Internet Bad, a celebration of cinema uploaded directly to the place that hates it the most. I'm Corey, this is Shane, and in our conquest to combat media illiteracy and internet outrage, we're talking about Star Wars again, and we're talking about The Acolyte again, which I told myself I wasn't going to do, but we're doing it, and it's here, and there's no turning back now, as they say. So Shane, how are you, sir? How are things?
I'm good. I'm wearing black to, really mourn the loss of Star Wars, according to the internet. I had to, celebrate the passing for the 17th time in the past 3 years. Yeah, it seems like every other week Star Wars has died again. So I'll just have to keep wearing the black t-shirt.
Who killed it this time? Or is that the mystery angle for this whole thing?
Yeah, I think so. That's the mystery of the whole show. Who killed the Star War?
It's Colonel Mustard in the study with the lead pipe.
It was Dave Filoni with the cowboy hat.
He just smothered Star Wars to death with his cowboy hat. That would actually be pretty hysterical. So so we're talking about episode 3 of The Acolyte. There are going to be spoilers in this, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, please turn away and come back and see us once you're done. This one was entitled Destiny. It was directed by Kogo Nada, one named director, who I am not familiar with in any way, shape, or form other than this Star Wars thing. Shane, you might know some stuff, but this episode is a big-time flashback. We go 16 years in the past, and it takes place entirely on the planet of Brendok, and it features the younger version of the twins, Osha and May. Also introduces Mother Anasea, played by Jodie Turner-Smith, and a coven of witches. And Shane, you're the smart one here. I am just the talking head on this show. So what is the thing that murdered Star Wars in this episode?
Nothing.
I need to know. I couldn't figure it out, so I need your help, being that you're intelligent.
It was really interesting, because going into this, all of the tweets were talking about how this was the episode that is going to finally kill Star Wars forever. And then I watched it, and it was like, okay, that was it. Like, it seemed very inoffensive to me, and I think people are latching on to a couple of things that I don't really agree with, that are, game changers and killing the entire franchise. But maybe it's just that I don't care enough about lore or whatever. I don't even think it breaks the lore. I think it follows it pretty well. But my intention when watching any new show is that I just want to see a good story, and I don't really care too much about whether or not one line from some other show contradicts this one or whatever, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't think it killed Star Wars at all. I don't think it was great, and we'll go over that. Like, I don't think this is like top tier television or anything, but I think the hatred that it's getting is way overblown.
Yeah, where are we at Rotten Tomatoes wise at this point?
Like 20% or something.
20% audience score, 90-something% from critics, and you said that this was the lowest rated on IMDb, right?
Yeah, it's like 3.2 or something on IMDb.
And what did the other episodes get?
I think 6 and 5.8, something like that. So the other two got review bombed, but this one got especially review bombed.
So introducing more female characters that are potentially different orientation than what has typically existed in Star Wars, plus a different way of viewing what most people have known as the Force for the last 40
Yeah.
years, seems to be a recipe for a lot of outrage. Is that what you're
Yeah.
telling me? Is that what I'm...
It seems to be. And, you know, I think it's pretty awful to see some of the jokes that people are making around it. That, like, you know, like making lesbian jokes about Star Wars, and it's like these people exist, right? Like in real life, and when you're
Real
making fun
people.
of them like this, like there are gay people in real life. One of them is the showrunner, and people are just making jokes like it's nothing, and it's really a shame because I am totally for dogging a show if like it's actually not good or like the
Sure.
story is not working or whatever. I don't think we should, you know, threaten the directors or anything like that, like people do if something's not great. But attacking people for, you know, politics and stuff like that, it just feels very icky.
Keep my politics out of Star Wars, right? That's the whole...
Yeah, right. Because politics have never been in Star Wars before, right? Ever.
That's the
George
whole thing.
Lucas famously avoids all politics in his movies.
But Shane, I guess this begs the question: who could have done this? Whose idea could this have been? And by gosh, we got our answer today thanks to the good folks over at StarWars.com. I have an article here. It's an interview with Jodie Turner Smith talking about Mother Anastasia and her character and introduction. But before we get into that part of it, the beginning of the article says, "Not all witches are sisters of Dathomir," which is also another talking point because the Dathomirian Night Sisters have been a thing in Star Wars for a very long time.
Yep.
They were introduced in the Clone Wars, which is when, George Lucas was still working on Star Wars. So shocker, go figure on that one. But it says here in the article, it's a pull quote from Leslie Headland, and it says, "Dave Filoni very quickly became kind of a mentor of mine in terms of navigating what this part of the timeline would look like for both the Jedi and then other Force users. It was kind of this aha moment for me when he told me, not all witches are Night Sisters."
I thought that was like the best article that could have dropped today, because the entire week everyone's been going on and on about how Leslie Headland is killing Star Wars, and then she's like, "Yeah, this whole thing was Dave's idea." I think it's so funny.
Yeah, which if you want to talk about behind the scenes stuff, a lot of people on the internet that are not informed like to claim that Dave Filoni is the savior of Star Wars. He's George Lucas's heir apparent. They worked together on the Clone Wars. He has ascended, within the ranks of Lucasfilm to the point where he's chief creative officer, I think is his job title.
Yeah, something like that.
Which that means that any and all story decisions for all of these shows have to pass across his desk, and he's got to sign off on them, right? So these folks that like to prop him up on the pedestal, he must be going through a Harvey Dent, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain moment.
Yes, I think so.
Because this is where we're at, right?
Yep.
But again, at the end of the day, who cares, right? Like, none of that stuff should matter as long as the story is there, and if the story is good, then you go with it. So I think that's enough of us rambling on about people on the internet who are dumb. Let's dive into that story, right? Because that's really the most important thing. That's why we're here, is fair and balanced opinions on movies and television. Pull the thread, click that subscribe button. Shane, what worked for you in this episode?
So I liked the ideas that it brought forth. I think it kind of reminded me of, I'm not sure if you've played it, but the second Knights of the Old Republic game that everyone reveres and says is great, because what that game does is it takes a view of the Force that is not just Sith Jedi, right? And tries to expand what the Force is, add some gray area in there and talk about how it's kind of all around us, right? So that idea of the Force being everywhere and anyone can tap into it has been around forever. George Lucas has even said in an interview that is the case, that like anyone can use the Force as long as they work at it. The Jedi are just the people that work at it, right? And so I don't think that's a new concept, but I think it's interesting that they're trying to do that. So like there's this whole group of people that don't even call it the Force, which I guess is blasphemy to anyone on the internet. But it's like it's not like Star Wars is saying it's not called the Force anymore.
Right.
It's like no, there's these 20 people who don't call it the Force. It's just 20 of them.
Yeah,
And
and they're
rest of them
hiding.
still call it the Force.
They're hiding on a planet that is completely uninhabited, as the Jedi have said in
Yeah.
this episode, and they're trying to stay away from society in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah.
So was it George Lucas who killed Star Wars then, Shane?
Probably.
Okay, got it. Yeah, the Night
Everyone has
Sisters.
killed Star Wars at
The
some
Night
point in their
Sisters
life.
use magic, right?
Yes.
They just call it magic. It's still the Force
Yep.
to a degree, right?
Yep.
So we've had this stuff for years. None of this is really all that new.
No.
But I like you, I love the idea of doing something new and different. I am not interested in coming back and watching the same thing over and over and over and over again. Sometimes new things are going to work. Sometimes new things are not going to work. For me, this worked because, you know, like my lady friend said to me after the episode, it's same God, different name, right? It's a reflection of religion in the world that we live in today.
Yep.
And that's great. And I thought that whole part of it was really good. I also very much enjoyed the beginning of the cracks in the armor of the Jedi Order, right? Because in the High Republic and in the books that take place even further before this show, the Jedi are the darlings of the Republic. They are revered in every way, shape, and form. They can do no wrong. If a Jedi shows up, everything is going to be fine. They have temples scattered throughout the galaxy. They're stationed everywhere. Everyone loves them, except for the Nile pirate raiders that don't love them. But you need a villain for every story, right? But in this, between where we're at now and the events of the Phantom Menace and then Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, we have to get to the point where the Jedi fall, right? And this episode had some really interesting tidbits in it, like them breaking into a compound by hacking their way through someone else's security system. Spying on children that are out in the woods, just playing around and having a good old time, making some butterflies stop their wings. And then also my absolute favorite one is where Carrie Ann Moss's character, Master Ndara, says to these witches, by Republic law, you cannot train these children, but we can take them. Right. So to me, the whole point of the prequel trilogy, and I think a lot of folks will agree with this, is that the Jedi were completely fallible, and their hubris is what led to their downfall. And to be able to show the beginnings of that and kind of the precursor to how they get to where they are during the prequels, to me, that's very fascinating.
Yeah. And I think it's the right approach too. It's this weird, like, I don't know why this prevailing sentiment is that the Jedi are the good guys. They're always the good guys. But like good guys can be fallible. Like it doesn't mean that, like, I didn't see anything in this episode, and we'll talk about like what we think is going to happen there in the future. But I didn't see anything in this episode that painted the Jedi as bad.
Right.
Just like struggling with their duties kind of thing, which that's already been a thing in the prequels. So I think it's interesting. And like even in the past episode where Torben says like, we thought we were doing the right thing. Right. I think that's a good concept to latch onto, is like these Jedi have the best intentions, but maybe things don't work out the way that they think they will.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
Not everything in life does, right?
No. And I agree with you that like I'm happy we're not just seeing the same story over and over again. Although there are callbacks. So the obvious one is like when Osha says like, "Well, I never see you again." It's like, she said the thing, right? I mean, people who say that like this writer's room doesn't know Star Wars, they're literally direct quoting Star Wars. Sure. So whatever.
Yeah, and Mother Anastasia, her description of the thread is a direct callback to Obi-Wan describing the Force to Luke in A New Hope. I think some of the verbiage that's used is even the same.
Yeah.
Right?
interesting. But the other thing I liked about this was this does feel a little bit more like an actual TV show structurally. The first two episodes set up the story and they set up the characters, and then you take a pause in the narrative and you go back, and it's like, hey, here's how we got to this point. Here's Osha's backstory. And what I think is really interesting about this episode specifically, and you alluded to it when you texted me about the titles. In the first two titles, there's a slash in between them, indicating you're seeing both perspectives of May and Osha simultaneously.
Yep.
This one did not have that. And so I think the implication is that this was all from Osha's perspective. And then later on, we'll get the same events told through May's perspective, probably as some sort of reveal later. And I think that's interesting too. I think it's a nice way to structure an episodic story. This was very self-contained. It does lead into where we were, but nothing about this is like cross-cutting between flashback. It was literally just, here's the flashback.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And especially not even just that, yes, this is an episodic television show, but it's also being marketed as a mystery.
Yeah.
If you watch a mystery TV show or a mystery movie, or, you know, one of the Knives Out movies or whatever, you don't get the whole story.
No.
You know, less than halfway through, right? You get little nuggets of information that are sprinkled throughout, and then towards the end, the grand reveal happens, and then you find out who the guilty party is or whatever. And, you know, in this case, there may be multiple guilty parties, but it's a little bit of a Rashomon effect here. And like you said, with the one point of view, right? This one obviously being just Osha's. And
the last time they did this, it famously worked out for Star Wars.
Yeah, it went really well for them. It was this small film called The Last Jedi. But yeah, if anyone wants to know what the Rashomon effect is, it's a structure from a Kurosawa movie from back in the day where the same thing is shown from multiple points of view, and those are all very different. And then by the end of the story, you find out what the actual truth is. And Leslie Headland has said herself that was one of the influences of the creation of this series. So I dig that. I like the fact that I don't know everything. Quite yet, and
watching.
You know, when the episode's over, you send me a text. Other friends send me text. We talk with friends and we theorize, and it's like, oh, what do you think's going to happen? Who's going to do this? What's going to be the other thing? That is so much more interesting than, well, I know exactly what's going to happen here.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and that's where you lose kind of the like in the past where Star Wars and other shows, not just Star Wars, have been doing this like elongated movie type of thing. It doesn't really spur the same level of discussion. And then also I'll say I like that we get weekly episode drops, right? Because it keeps us talking about it. Whereas like I think for a couple of years there, and really for an extended period of time, Netflix was just dropping the big shows all at once. So everyone would binge them in a week. And then like I think they deprogrammed people on how to watch TV, right? Because a lot of people complain that it's like, you know, oh, they gave up the mystery, or they didn't give up the mystery in episode 2. It's like, we're a quarter of the way in. Just chill, like be patient.
Yeah.
Things will be answered.
Imagine watching The Empire Strikes Back, and in the first act of the movie, when the Millennium Falcon escapes Hoth and Darth Vader walks through the Rebel base, and he just goes, God damn it, my son got away again.
Yeah.
That's the big reveal of that movie, right? You build towards that the entire time. It would completely kill all of that. So
yeah, I'm happy that this feels like an actual show.
And I think that's something that, and I don't know who is really at fault when it comes to this stuff, but because Marvel has been guilty of it, Star Wars too, making that transition from movies to television has been a little bit rocky for both of those studios. You know, people famously disliked The Falcon and the Winter Soldier because it was like, okay, guys, you took a 2.5 hour long script and you stretched it out to 6 hour long episodes or whatever, right? I think we're getting to a point now, shows like this, shows like Andor, especially season 2 of Andor, which is going to have 4 different mini movies that make a season. They're getting to a point where they're starting to realize how television should work, and hopefully they'll be all the better for it. But
and really the difference was they started hiring television writers.
That also helps.
Like if you take a bunch of movie writers and directors and tell them make a 6-episode thing, they're not going to know how to do it unless they've worked in TV before, and nobody has.
Right.
I
mean, take the Obi-Wan show. That literally, it's public knowledge that was a movie script.
Yeah.
And they just stretched it out into a TV show. And if you take all the fluff of that out, you probably have a decent 2-hour movie in there. It's just with all the extra things in there that,
I'm interested to see how 2 movies work out. One is Moana 2 and one is Mando and Grogu, because both of those were supposed to be television shows and they're now becoming movies. So it's going to be weird to see the opposite happen, where usually it's the movie and they're like, no, make it a series. It's the opposite with those two. So I wonder if they'll feel kind of episodic as they go along, because they originally were television scripts. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, or even if they do like chapters in the movie, like Furiosa had chapters, or like a lot of Tarantino's movies have chapters in them. So we'll see. Anything else in that episode, Shane, though, that stuck out to you in a good way?
Not particularly. I think I've covered most of what I enjoyed about it.
All right, time to be mean.
Yeah,
what didn't work for you? I know where you're going with this, and it has to do with the kids.
Yeah, there's 2 things I didn't love, and it sucks because like on my good side is like I really like the ideas that they're pursuing, and on the bad side, I don't think the execution is really that great in general. I mean, we can talk about a bunch of different things, but at the crux of the issue is that like the show is just not good enough to combat all of this hatred that it's getting. So like when Andor came out, there was a lot of people that were like, this isn't Star Wars, this is something different, like blah blah blah.
Well, there are bricks and screws in Andor,
not nearly the level of hatred that this is getting. Obviously, I don't want to compare the two, but any of the naysayers could be easily discounted by saying, yeah, but it's just a really good show. Like it is a solid, like it was nominated for a bunch of Emmys. Yep. It is a good show, critically acclaimed show. It is maybe the only Disney Plus show that I've seen that like rivals other companies like prestige television shows in terms of just pure quality. And this is not that. And so it's hard to find the advocates. I haven't seen a ton of people. I'm sure there are, but I haven't seen a ton of people who are like really gung-ho about the show. There's people that enjoy it and people that are watching it. And then there's people that absolutely hate it. And I think the issue is just the quality bar is just a touch below where it needs to be.
Yeah, not quite good enough to fight the hate, but not quite bad enough to warrant it either.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's fine. It's a solid 7 out of 10 show. It's not a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes show, but it's like it's tough because I'm not going to stand up here and say like, no, this is actually, you're missing something. It's the best thing ever. Like I can't say that. It's not great. And the 2 major things, one is the kids were not great.
It's so hard.
Really hard. Yeah. Like the Stranger Things of the world are like lightning in a bottle when you find them. Like it is so hard to find good kid actors. And these were not great. And I don't want to discount the kids at all. Like, look back at Phantom Menace. The same thing happened there with Jake Lloyd. He didn't give a great performance, but like he was like 10. Like you shouldn't expect too much from children, right? And I think
what were you doing when you were 10? Right?
Yeah, not that.
I was out in the backyard playing with a stick in the dirt. Like, come on, man.
So it's tough. I mean, they always used to tell me in film school, like, especially when we were doing our short films, they were like, never cast kids or pets because it's just too difficult to do unless you're really, really experienced and know what you're doing. And here it didn't feel like they did. And so that performance, those performances, both of them were kind of the key to the episode, and it kind of fell flat. Right.
Fair assessment.
So I missed it. I didn't love that. And then also I have to hand it to the haters on one thing, and it's the power of one, power of two, power of many chant that the witches were doing, because that took me completely out of it. And I'm like, fine, you can hate on that. Like it wasn't great. It came across as kind of hokey. But it did remind me, and I texted you this, is that like I grew up Catholic, and whenever you go to Catholic mass, when they're giving the hymns and stuff, they'll actually kind of sing them. It's not a full song. There are full songs, but when they're actually giving the hymns, they kind of like use singing intonation. So like, for
Mhm.
example, I'm gonna do it.
Oh God,
They'll say something like,
it's the end of this
and
channel.
Jesus died for our sins. It reminded me exactly of
Ugh.
this chant where the power of many.
Ugh.
It reminded me of that. And like, I don't know if it's a stretch or not, but I actually looked it up, and Leslie Headland grew up Catholic. And so I wonder if like that's kind of like she's trying to channel her, religious upbringing, which I would imagine she's not a huge fan of.
Exercising her demons by chance. You might
Yeah,
think.
right. So I wonder, like, is this like a subtle like make fun of her religious upbringing type of moment? I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's what it reminded me of. But it really took me out of it. It was goofy. It didn't play for me.
Yeah. The thing that was weird about it was that on paper, like the idea, the power of one, the power of two, the power of many, is actually a decent concept.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I'm
But
cool with that.
why did it have to be spoke sung? I'm
Yeah,
not
I don't know.
100% certain. Like,
But yeah, that is
especially
like so
considering
memeable.
Michael Abels, who's the composer of this show, has been doing a great job.
Yeah,
Right. Like those scenes didn't need the chanting. They could have
yeah,
gone with just the musical score. And I don't think it would have had a greater or lesser impact on that. But my biggest complaint is that my homeboy Kelnaka, the Wookiee Jedi, did not get to do anything other than repair a speeder in this episode.
it's coming.
I know. I'm just ready for it. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan. There's a Wookiee Jedi. Well, there's a couple in the Star Wars canon. There's one in the animated stuff, and then there's one in the High Republic books, and his name is Bur Yaga, and he's fantastic. He's like an empath. So like a lot of people can't understand him because he speaks Shriwook, the Wookiee language. But he through the Force can like feel people's emotions, and it's just like a really fascinating character. And I'm excited to see hopefully more of Kelnaka on screen.
I'm sure we will. Like, we saw him at the end of episode 2, so I'm guessing the next episode will start with him because we've kind of resumed the narrative.
Right. Yeah. When we go back to
Yeah.
current time, that's where we should be going because he's next on the
on the
Kill Bill
Arya
list.
Stark's kill list.
Frozen meets Kill Bill, right? That was the pitch for.
Is that what she said?
That's what Leslie said. Yeah.
Okay, it kind of works actually.
Yeah.
Magical children
and the Death List 5.
Bill, yeah, that's true. It's actually lining up pretty perfectly.
Yep.
That's a decent pitch.
But yeah, I mean, negatives. The one thing that I kind of didn't like about the episode in earnest is that it felt like it had 2 or 3 endings, and every time it faded to black, I was like, oh, here come the credits.
Yeah.
Oh wait, one more thing.
There was one like right after she got rescued that it cut to black, and I thought that was it. And then it's like just getting her on the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the same thing actually.
But at the end of the day, I would rather have something where it hits the credits and I go, okay, I can't wait for next week. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like I love Star Wars. I've always have. And, even as bad as Star Wars can be, I'm usually planted in the chair at 9:00 every night.
Yeah.
That it airs to watch it as soon as it's there. Right. So I'm excited for it. I'm cautiously optimistic to see where things go. Speaking of which, where do you think things are going to go?
Yeah, it's really interesting that the second half of that flashback, or maybe really like the last 10 minutes, we did not get all of the fill in the gaps there. Like things were confusing and did not make sense. And I think it's because we're told them from Osha's perspective, right? She's in her room, fire gets started, she exits her room, everyone's dead, there's fire everywhere. It's like, that door fire could not have caused all of that. Something else happened, but from her point of view, that's all that she saw. And that's all she's been told, is that her family died in a fire, right?
Could you say that she saw this from a certain point of view, Shane?
She did. It's a good little, like, that is Star Wars, right? Like, everything that we've seen in Star Wars has been like point of view on things. Even like The Last Jedi with the Rashomon effect. Like, Kylo Ren's point of view of that night was different than Luke's point of view from that night, right? And Obi-Wan saying, your father, he killed your father, certain point of view. And even the prequels with Anakin, it's like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil,
Yeah.
which is a terrible line, but the concept remains the same.
Yeah.
So I think like deferring points of view and viewing moments through different lenses is very integral to what Star Wars has always been.
Mhm.
And so I like that they did that too.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but obviously all those witches are dead in a circle. They're not burnt,
No.
So what do you think happened there?
I don't know exactly. My immediate thought was they rebelled against the Jedi coming to pick up the girl.
Okay.
Um, but maybe there's more to the story because there was some conflict there between the two mothers,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm wondering if that boiled over because we never saw. They always say in movies, unless you see a dead body, someone's not dead.
Mm-hmm.
The one person we did not see die was the I don't know the name of the race. I'm a terrible Star Wars fan.
She's a Zabrak. Which is the
Zabrak,
same as
Darth Maul, right? Yeah, the
yeah.
horn girl.
Yep.
We never saw her dead, so that makes me think she had something to do with it.
Right.
Like that seems too obvious. Like you would show her dead too, if that were not the case.
Yeah, I think the way they're trying to make you think is that the Jedi came in and just killed everyone, right?
Yeah.
But this show has proven so far that everything you saw in the trailers and everything you're seeing so far is not quite what it seems. So
Yeah.
My thought here, and I could be very wrong, I'm often wrong with this sort of thing, is that they finally had their little witch council meeting, and Mother Anastasia said to the rest of the coven, I want to let Osha go. Because they have that nice, tender, sweet moment. They hug. Osha's like, this is what I want to do. This is where my heart is, whatever, right? And then because of that, the rest of the witches rebel against Anastasia, and they kill her. But the Jedi try to stop them from killing her.
And
then that's where that kind of snowballs from. The only wrench in that is what Torben said in episode 2 when he said, I thought we were doing the right thing. So, but again, I like all that because that leaves my brain in doubt, and I don't know what the right answer is, and I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, and I hope the answer is worthwhile once we get to it, and not like a very simple or it. I love it when we get an answer for something that it's not something that I predicted. It's not something I ever even thought of. So I think that's where I hope that it goes. That we've talked about what we theorized over the past 5 minutes, and none of that's true. Like I hope we're wrong, and that it's something completely different and more creative because they're getting paid way more than we are.
Yeah. Do you remember the good old days when subverting expectations was a good thing?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And now that's like a dirty word, right?
I'll have to paywall that 75-minute Last Jedi video. If anyone wants to know our thoughts on that movie, well, we can battle it out. Corey and I famously disagree on that movie. I don't even dislike it. I don't hate it. I'm not a hater. Sorry, I'm not. But
well, we just got 12 dislikes on this video. Just
we like The Last Jedi. Dislike.
We both don't like The Rise of Skywalker, so there's that. But yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. Who do you think Darth Teeth is?
The guy from the poison shop.
Oh, so you think it's the guy from The Good Place?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems too. My random theory is maybe he's also a twin.
Ooh, okay.
Because he talks about like him a lot, but he knows who he is. So maybe it's like it's either that or like a dual personality kind of thing. But I think something about twins or dyads or something is going to be said here. I think. Yeah. I don't know.
Do you think that Darth Teeth, which I think is the most hilarious name that the internet has given this guy?
Yes, he looks like the Mario bullet thing. I saw that on Twitter. I was like, yes, that's it.
Do you think he's the master or the apprentice?
I think you're gonna laugh when I say this, but I think that they're going to lead this into Plagueis in some way.
Yeah, you think so?
I think they are.
Okay.
And I am very anti cameos. Like famously anti-cameo, anti-lore, make it its own thing. Well, I think that's where they're going with it. I think it might actually be kind of interesting, right? Because the
Okay.
whole thing that everyone's pissed off about is, they conceived these children with the Force, and that's what Plagueis and Palpatine did with Anakin, and so it's not special. But I think it also would be kind of cool if that's where he learned it from. It's like, oh, these witches did this. Maybe I should do this.
I mean, he didn't just think it up out of his own brain one day, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know, but I could see maybe leading into it that way. Plus, it's only like what 100 years before Phantom Menace,
it
so
is
I would
100
assume
years before. Yeah.
there's some threads. I don't know the aging or anything. Like maybe Plagueis isn't even alive. I have no idea. Like somebody tell me if that's correct. I don't think it's ever been said how old he ever was, right? I know he died clearly.
Yeah, I mean, there is a novel about him, but I don't think it's considered canon anymore. I think it's officially legends, but
Got it.
some people still go off of that. Who knows? They have a pretty blank slate that they can work off of with that, if that's the direction they go.
Yeah,
It could be that, it could be somebody else, or it could be, that it could be Plagueis under the helmet, or it could be somebody who Plagueis is the master already, and that's Plagueis' apprentice before Palpatine, and who knows, right? But I think, we're barreling towards a cover up by the Jedi, right?
Yeah,
Because in
for
Phantom
sure.
Menace, Ki-Adi-Mundi gives the line, "The Sith have been extinct for over a millennium,"
Yeah,
and
so
Yoda
either
and
it's
Mace
the
Windu kind of
Jedi,
side eye each other about it.
yeah,
So we'll see. I don't know.
it's either a cover up or everyone dies and nobody finds out about it. Um, I kind of think cover up is more interesting personally.
Yeah.
That like, maybe they saw it happening, or maybe they didn't even tell Yoda. I don't know. Like that,
Yeah.
they didn't tell the Jedi Council stuff, and that would be kind of a failure in the system, right? Like, it's kind of like Hollywood, right? Oh gosh, should I go down this road?
I mean, you've got about 5 minutes before
But
we hit our
like,
time. So
I don't know, like, all the bad stuff that was happening in Hollywood and how like nobody told anybody else about it. I mean, maybe that's where they're going with it. That like the
Could
Jedi
be.
were just dysfunctional because they wanted to cover their ass and they didn't report it up to the right people.
Yeah. Could be fun. We'll
Could
see
be.
where it goes. But there's always also the chance that this is not a one and done miniseries. It could be a multiple season thing if it is received well and if the viewership is high. I mean,
If it's received well.
well, come on, you know what I mean. Disney is not looking at Rotten Tomatoes
No,
audience scores to determine whether or not their shows are good. That's
no.
just not the way things are. But
Yeah. I don't think there's any chance of season 2, even if they were planning it. I think it would
and
be.
why do you say that?
I think the outrage is too much because I have thought this for years that they are scared of their fans and they'll do ultimately what the fans want at the end of the day, because they proved it after The Last Jedi, where everyone went crazy, and rather than double down on that story, they were like, undo all of it and just retcon it into Rise of Skywalker.
My counterpoint there, though, is that they're still making a Rey movie.
They are.
Well,
so yeah,
supposedly.
I don't know that it's true. But I think I don't know. I feel like they're, like I said this about the Mando season 2 finale, that it felt like an answer for the Last Jedi backlash, where everyone's like, that's not my Luke Skywalker. I wanted to see badass Luke Skywalker, and they're like,
you said the word. How dare you?
Here's badass Luke.
Put $1
Skywalker
in the swear jar.
Oh yes,
you
I
said the
badass.
word.
I did.
You son
I
of a
thought you were going
bitch.
to say it with the Wookiee. He didn't do anything badass.
Well, I'm sure he will eventually, because what else is a Wookiee going to do?
Yeah, true. Pull people's arms out of their sockets.
Yeah. So what do you think, man? You think we're going to talk about this show again, or are we going to take some time away from it?
Yeah, so I think we've got some other stuff coming up. There's so many movies coming out this, upcoming summer season, that I think we're going to take a break from The Acolyte for a little bit. We'll come back after a couple more episodes and do another episode on it to kind of catch up. Maybe we do one just before the finale, or depending on how the structure of the show is working, maybe we'll pick a point where we can do another one.
Yeah, I
But
think that's good.
I think this was good to get on here and talk about because everyone is talking about this episode.
Oh, for sure.
After what happened on Tuesday night, and kind of present a more fair critique of it. We didn't love it. I didn't love it, but it's interesting enough, and I'll keep watching.
Just like the first two episodes for me, not perfect, but intriguing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've said this to you privately, you know, I think it kind of sits in between the Mandoverse stuff and Andor in terms of quality. It's kind of like right in between the two.
Yeah, I agree.
And hey,
aside
maybe
from
that's
Mando
just what Star Wars needs.
I think Mando season 1 is slightly better than this.
You just like Greg Fraser.
Well, I mean, if you make the show look good,
it's half the battle, right?
Mando season 1 is where they had an actual idea for the show, and then they ran out of ideas and just started shoving Clone Wars characters into it, and that's when they lost me. And they lost Greg Fraser. They lost me and Greg Fraser.
And now, in a striking turn of events, Greg Fraser is shooting a movie for Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who were famously fired from the Han Solo movie.
I know.
Because it's like poetry, it rhymes. God damn it!
Star Wars fumbled the bag.
I think that's a good place to pull the plug on this episode. For the love of God, like Shane said, we got some other stuff we want to talk about. There's a ton of great movies that are coming out this summer. You know, you've got Hitman out on Netflix. Kinds of Kindness is coming out later this year. Alien Romulus, which had an absolute slapper of a trailer.
I can't wait for that movie. Yeah.
You know, I went to the cinema last night to see the new Bad Boys movie, and it started 30 minutes later than it was supposed to, but
Shocker.
2.5 minutes of that was the Alien trailer.
Nice.
And for that 2.5 minutes, I was very happy.
So, it's probably better than the Bad Boys movie. I don't know.
The Bad Boys movie was
fine.
It was completely harmless, and it got a lot of laughs out of the crowd that I was with. So, and you know what? Good for that movie because it's making money.
Yes, it is.
It's outperforming expectations. Which is
I think we should do a box office talk. Just
would love to.
The state of the box office. I think Hitman could go into there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was in theaters for like 12 minutes before Netflix was like, no, we hate cinemas. You must watch this on your television. So cool. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop us a like, leave a comment, subscribe, notification bell, all that YouTube crap. And we will see you in whatever the next video is.
We should take screenshots and edit them into the thumbnail. Just like you said.
I hate you so much. I can't do that.
Star Wars is dead.
You see those ones where people are like reacting to a movie and they're like,
yeah.
It's like,
dude, who watches a movie?
Who the fuck watches a movie that way? I would be like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.